7 million adults watched a children's show every afternoon.
A cow, a stall, and a barn, a farm, on a hill, and the ground, the green grass grew all around, all around.
That number shouldn't exist. And there's something stranger.
We're the Mouseketeers. We want to say hello and give 3 cheers for all of you who see us every day.
Disney didn't only want children watching, it wanted them wearing something. A hat with ears, millions of them, on millions of small heads all across America.
To meet me at the mall shop.
I'll meet you at the mall shop.
Meeting at the mall shop after school.
Nobody asks why a television show would need that. What does a program get from putting a symbol on your child? I went looking for the answer. It isn't about children at all.
Cheers for the merry Mouseketeers. Mouseketeers.
The children's show adults couldn't stop watching. 5 o'clock, weekday afternoon, 1956. School's out. The set warms up in the corner. Furniture. In a decade when fewer than 2/3 of American homes had one at all. The kids drop onto the rug. Then the adults sit down too. By its second season, the club had drawn more than 12 million children and 7 million adults. That combined audience was a record for television at the time. Not a record for children's programming, a record for television. A show made for people too young to buy anything was, briefly, the biggest thing on the air. Nobody's father schedules his day around a kid's variety hour. For 4 years, millions of them did exactly that, and nothing in it was aimed at them.
And we had everything mortgaged. It takes a lot of money to make these dreams come true.
Everybody thought he was completely nuts, and he was going to spend $17 million to build this.
No adult jokes, no wink over the children's heads. Whatever held 7 million grown adults in that room was something the show was doing to everyone in it. So the first clue isn't a fact about television. It's a question about people. What was that hour giving adults that they couldn't get anywhere else at 5 o'clock? Walt Disney needed television. The obvious answer is money. Children's programming sells cereal and toys. Disney had a mouse, so Disney made a children's show. Tidy, sensible, and it collapses the moment you look at 1954. Because in 1954, nobody would lend Walt Disney a dime.
Good morning, teacher.
Uh-oh, better check your gun, partner.
Oh, yeah.
It seems like
He had drawings of an amusement park and a stack of rejection letters. Banks, investors, all no. The design had no roller coaster, and everyone in the business knew a park without one would fail. So he walked into the television networks with an offer that sounds unhinged. You want a Disney show? Then buy a piece of my park. CBS said no. NBC said no. They wanted the programming and nothing to do with an orange grove in Anaheim. ABC, running dead last, desperate, said yes. Walt described it later without much sentiment. The network needed his show so badly that they bought the amusement park. The contract is 4 pages of onion skin, signed in the spring of 1954, and the terms are the tell. $500,000 invested, $4.5 million in loans guaranteed. In exchange, the network took roughly 1/3 of Disneyland and the food concessions for 10 years. Because it inverts everything you assumed. The show wasn't the goal, the show was the currency. And a year later, into that same deal arrives an hour-long program, 5 days a week, built around 24 unknown children. Which is the strange part. If what you're financing is acres of concrete in California, why does your instrument have to be children? Mickey wasn't the star. Everyone assumes the mouse sold it. His name is on the door. Watch a real episode. Mickey appears in cartoons that had already played in theaters years earlier. He's the logo. He's the doorway. He is not what anyone is waiting for. You're waiting for the kids. And look at how they were picked. Disney didn't want polished professional child actors, he specifically wanted amateurs. He found Annette Funicello on a stage at the Burbank Starlight Bowl, 12 years old, dancing the Swan Queen. He was sitting in the audience. The studio called her dance school the next morning. Then came the choice almost nobody notices.
I used to go eat lunch in the Coral Room, though, and Bill Walsh, who produced the show, was in there quite a bit. Bill looked like, his hair was going off in all directions, saying, what's going to happen to me next, every day.
America met them by first name only. Annette, Cubby, Karen, Bobby, Tommy, Darlene. No surnames, no characters, no roles. A surname makes someone a performer you are watching. A first name makes them someone you know. These children weren't playing anyone. They were introduced the way you'd meet the kids on your own street. So the show wasn't building a cast. It was building an acquaintance. Millions of them at once in millions of houses. Take the measure of that. Before television, a child knew the children on their street. That was the whole world. Now, 5 5 afternoons a week, tens of millions of American children were meeting the same 6 kids by first name, forming the attachment at the same hour in the same way from Bakersfield to Baltimore. There had never been a generation that shared the same friends before. This is the first one. Nobody had ever done that to a country. So what happens when it works? Disney was selling belonging. Something you'd only catch if you watched it every day. The show behaves less like entertainment and more like an institution. Monday had a name, so did Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Friday was Talent Roundup Day. A roll call opened the hour, the children calling out their own names one at a time.
Doreen! Bobby! Shan! Mark! Annette!
An alma mater closed it, sung slow like a school song at the end of assembly. Church has that shape. A troop meeting has that shape. A club has that shape. And a club has a uniform. So a Disney staff artist named Roy Williams sketched a black felt beanie with 2 round ears.
Karen, now let's see what you look like when you're mad. That's fine. Hold it.
And a child in Ohio could put on precisely what the children on television were wearing. Now notice which direction that object travels. Every other show in history pushed one way, out of the screen, at you. This one handed something back and invited you to cross over, to stop being an audience. A cartoon ends at 6 o'clock. A membership doesn't. You wear it to school. You wear it to the dinner table. Some children slept in them. And here you'll reach the sensible conclusion. It's a merchandising scheme. Millions of hats, millions of dollars, a company printing money off small heads. Everyone lands there. I did too. Except that isn't what the ledgers showed. When people later examined why the club was allowed to die, one-sided factor was that Disney Studios were not realizing high profit margins on the merchandise. The hats weren't the windfall. Sponsors were lukewarm on educational programming for children. The show needed so many commercials just to pay for itself that the commercials became the thing they fought over. The most famous children's merchandise operation in American history. And the merchandise was not where the money was, which wrecks the tidy answer and leaves something far stranger standing. If the hats weren't the profit, what were they for? The hidden cost of becoming America's children. You'd assume the children got rich. Household names, a hit show, a merchandising empire with their faces on it.
See, I love the rolling mountains. No, the city's not for me.
Surely they came out of it made for life. Someone was paying for all this, and it wasn't the audience. The club ran an hour a day, 5 days a week, a punishing schedule for grown professionals. These were kids. School squeezed between takes, then rehearsal, then cameras, then home, while their faces got larger and larger out in the world. And here's the arithmetic that should make you wince. Annette's popularity was generating orders for something like 24,000 mouse ear hats a day. She was earning about $185 a week. Then she lost her own pair of felt ears. Disney charged her $55 out of that paycheck. Sit inside that a second. Not the money, the feeling of it.
My horse, the stage name of the horse in the series was Skyrocket, and the horse's real name was Pop. I do remember that the horse, stood on my foot once and then turned around, pivoted on it. I somehow pain you can remember.
Somewhere there was a slip of paper with a 13-year-old girl's name on it and a deduction. Down the hall, the mail room was sorting sacks of letters addressed to her. On the other side of the country, factories were stamping out her hat by the tens of thousands. Nobody meant it as cruelty. That's what's disturbing about it. It was paperwork. To the machine, the most beloved child in America was a wardrobe line item, replaceable by Friday if she stopped smiling. She never complained. Not then, not later. She'd been taught, like all of them, exactly what the smile was for. Was the club showing America a childhood, or quietly using one up? Why Annette became Disney. By the end of season 1, one child was pulling roughly 6,000 letters a month. Sacks of it. Envelopes addressed in pencil, in crayon, some with nothing on them but a first name and the word California. Walt didn't believe it. He asked Annette, half joking, whether she had an enormous Italian family somewhere, because the volume made no sense to him. That is not the reaction of a man executing a plan. That's a man discovering something he didn't design. And it put the studio in front of a decision, because the club was built on the opposite principle. 9, then 24, then 39 children. A group. No leads, no stars. Equal ears on equal heads. The entire premise was that any child could be one of them. The mail broke that. The mail said, they don't want a club, they want her. So Disney chose. When the club ended, the Mouseketeers went home. Almost every one of them. Annette stayed.
Hi, Mouseketeers.
I'm Annette, and today we're going on another Mouseketeer to England.
The studio kept her under contract and moved her into serials, then features, then a decade of beach pictures. One child was lifted out of the group and made a permanent piece of the company. The rest went back to being ordinary. That decision quietly rewrote what Disney was. It learned affection could be concentrated into a single face and carried for years. But affection for what? These children weren't doing anything remarkable. So what were millions of Americans reaching for at 5 o'clock? The perfect childhood that never really existed.
Bibbidi, bobbidi, boo!
You already know the answer because you can feel it. Think back. After school, before dinner, the floor in front of the television, somebody in the kitchen, that pocket of the afternoon when the day's obligations were finished and the evening hadn't started, and for 1 hour, nothing was required of you. That's what people remember. Not the sketches, the safety. Now watch what's happening on screen. Nobody is cruel, nobody is excluded, and the host, Jimmie Dodd, keeps stopping the show to speak directly to children about doing the right thing. Small moral lessons the crew nicknamed Doddisms. Kindness, honesty, effort, delivered by a grown man in mouse ears every afternoon. Then look out the window of that same house. New suburbs on old farmland. Fallout drills where children folded under desks in the middle of the school day.
That's a word cow. We want a picture cow.
Families in towns with no history yet, beside neighbors they'd known 11 months. A great many of those parents had spent their own childhoods in a depression, then a war. The club wasn't reflecting American childhood, it was issuing one. Cleaner, kinder, more certain than the one outside. And that lands differently once you remember the 7 million adults in the room. They weren't chaperoning, they were watching a childhood performed correctly. Some of them were watching one they never got. So the picture was flawless. What does that do to the real children standing inside it? The cracks behind the smile. Here's the contradiction nobody notices, and it's the strangest thing about the entire club.
Bill Walsh was the founding father of the Mickey Mouse Club. He was primarily a writer, but he was also a producer. Bill could direct, he could do anything.
The family on screen never changed. The children in it changed constantly. 39 kids passed through the original club. 9 lasted all 3 seasons. Line up the cast photographs season by season and you can watch it happen. Faces in the second row that simply aren't there the following year. No farewell episode, no explanation. Replaced by other children while the ears and the roll call carried on exactly as before. To a child at home, that group was permanent. Fixed. The same faces forever. Inside it, membership expired without warning.
One day, as the story goes, Walt Disney basically walked up to him and he said, I want you to be the producer of the Mickey Mouse Club. And he said, but I don't know anything about this, and he said, well, who does?
And the adults weren't permanent either. Bob Amsberry, who wrote and played so many of the sketches, died in 1957 while the show was still on the air. Jimmie Dodd, the man in the ears who taught a generation how to behave, was gone by 1964. The picture kept smiling through all of it. That's the machinery working as designed. The image was built never to change, which means real people could only ever be temporary inside it. Children age, illusions don't have to. Which is a strange kind of power for a company to discover it has. If the image could outlive the people in it, could it outlive the show itself?
There were just thousands of people in Chicago, and then we went to Australia, and we landed at the Sydney airport in Australia, and there were 20,000 people waiting for us. It was unbelievable. I mean, I had my own bodyguard.
The business that ended the magic. September 25th, 1959, the club goes off the air. Not from collapsing ratings, it was still popular. It died in a contract fight. Disney and ABC couldn't agree on renewal. The network wanted more commercial time inside the show than Disney would accept. Look at the shape of that. A program that stopped every afternoon to teach children about fairness was switched off in an argument over how many commercials could be crammed into it. Then it turned ugly. Having canceled it, ABC also refused to let Disney take the club anywhere else. Disney sued, won a settlement, and still had to accept the show could never air on a rival network. Now here's the piece that should stop this investigation dead. Walt won.
The Mickey Mouse Club and the Mouseketeers inspired a host of merchandise, including hats, guitars, wagons, roller skates, games, photo albums, and even nightlights.
And he never brought the club back. He took the view that too much time had passed and left the most beloved children's program in the country in the vault. That makes no sense. A man supposedly building lifelong attachment through this show shrugs and abandons it, unless he no longer needed it. Look at those same years. The park was open, and in 1960, Disney bought back the third of Disneyland that ABC had taken for $500,000, paying $7.5 million. 15 times over in 5 years. The network had owned a piece of the future and sold it back. The children's show it bankrolled had already done its work. That explains why the show stopped. It explains nothing about what happened next. Because the show stopped, and nothing else did. The park kept filling, the ears kept selling, the name kept growing, decade after decade, while the program that supposedly built it sat untouched. Which means the club was never the thing that was running. So what was?
I realized how popular we were when we went on tour to Chicago. We stopped in Oklahoma City. There were about 40,000 people there. A big dust storm came up and our black ears turned to brown. We were doing the Mouseketeers dance and all of the things we did on tour.
Disney never stopped using the formula. 3 things. They look unrelated. Put them in the same room. A toy commercial in 1955. A casting call in Orlando in 1989. A hat on a gift shop shelf this morning. Start with the commercial. The toy company Mattel sponsored the club and became the first toy company in America to advertise directly to children on television. Not to the parents holding the wallet, to the children. That practice, the one that now runs the entire toy industry, begins inside this show. Now the casting call. 1989, a revival in Florida, a room full of kids. Out of it walk Britney Spears, Justin Timberlake, Christina Aguilera, Ryan Gosling. Different decade, different children, identical architecture. Know them by first name. Make the schedule a ritual. Let the merchandise follow the affection.
Mickey Mouse.
Now the hat. Still on sale today. The same silhouette a staff artist sketched for a black and white television show 70 years ago. Those aren't 3 facts. That's one instruction carried out 3 times across 70 years. Disney never remade the Mickey Mouse Club. It remade the method, and the method outgrew television entirely. It became a cable channel, then parks in Florida, Tokyo, Paris. Then a company that could hand the same object to your grandmother, your mother, and your granddaughter and charge each of them for it. Which means this was never a story about a canceled program from 1959.
I was the one that always did what I was told to do. They said, do this, I did it. They said, do that, I did it. That's the way I was. And they were handing us their autograph books to the windows and we were signing. And
it makes the last question the only one that matters. What happened to the children who wore them first? The children grew up. Try something before we finish. Say their first names out loud. Annette, Cubby, Karen, Bobby. They arrived without effort, didn't they? Now try to name one episode, one sketch, one thing that actually happened on the show. Almost nobody can. The plots are gone. The names are perfect. Sit with how unusual that is. You cannot recall a single scene, but you can recall 6 children the way you can recall the kids from your own 4th grade class, the ones whose names you'd still produce at a reunion 60 years on without ever having spoken to them since. Nothing else on television did that to you. You watched hundreds of shows as a child. You can name the programs. You cannot do this with the people in them. They weren't celebrities to you. They were classmates. And they grew up. Put a reunion photograph beside the 1956 cast shot, and the arithmetic of it lands harder than any statistic. The same people, the same order, 60 years of ordinary life in between. Some kept performing. Some left the business and never looked back. They took jobs, raised families, aged into people you'd pass in a grocery store without a glance. Annette, the girl with 6,000 letters a month, announced in 1992 that she had multiple sclerosis, spent her last years out of view, and died in 2013. Children who, if they're living, are in their 80s now. But you still know their names. You knew them before I said them. That's not fondness for an old television show. That's memory filing strangers as family. And that's the last clue, the one that finally explains the hat.
They were like the Beatles in those days, yeah. This was a pretty serious worship of this gang of really nice, kind of average young kids, you know, talented kids, but nice kids.
It was never really about kids. So why did a children's show need to put a symbol on your head if the hats weren't even where the money was? Because a viewer watches, a member belongs.
So as I was doing that, there was a man holding a little girl, and he was going, please, just one more, please, just one more. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't. And
The ears were never merchandise. They were the moment a child stopped receiving something and started being part of something. And nobody handed them to you. You asked. You put them on yourself. Now run the whole thing again with that in your hand. The first names, the roll call, the alma mater. 7 million adults on the sofa behind the children. A show built to pay for a place you could one day walk into and stand inside. None of it was about entertaining children. It was a relationship. Trust, routine, ritual, belonging, delivered every weekday at the same hour to a generation at exactly the age when those things set like concrete. Whether or not anyone ever wrote it on a whiteboard, that is what the club did. Those children thought they were joining a club. They were beginning something most of them never left, and later paid to hand to their own children. So the next time you see a pair of those ears, on a shelf, in a park, on a grandchild, look at them properly. Nobody ever outgrew that club. That was always the idea.